Greetings, Dr. Razman and Dr. Ramani. My name is Ahnaf, and I'm going to be presenting a very simple yet applicable homemade filter. Um, this could actually be used for a lot of household activities that we do in our everyday lives, despite the fact that this is not exactly safe for to be used as drinking water. So what do I mean by these household activities? Well, there's actually a lot of stuff that we do every day, such as washing our cars, planting our plants, even washing our toilets. And if we could do this, it's actually going to reduce a lot of clean water being used for purposes that don't necessarily require clean water. And all in all, it will also help to reduce the amount of water that we waste on a daily basis. So let's jump right into it. So to start off, we're just gonna prepare our very own filter, which will comprise of a tissue paper on the bottom. This will act as the final filter layer. So I was about to use the tissue paper as it was as a whole, but then when I checked it later on, it seemed a bit too thin. I felt like a lot of waste would just pass through if it was that thin, so I folded it in half. And then to secure the tissue paper on the neck of the bottle, I used a rubber band and I actually wrapped it twice just to ensure that it's tight enough. And we'll see that shortly. Right after that, we instantly just prepare the materials that we use. We used two different types of sand and also some amount of pebbles and then some cotton. The reason for the cotton being used is also to just furthermore ensure that the last layer does not have to take up so much waste, as a cotton will absorb a lot of the impurities. Sand is used to filter out small sediments, and the gravel is used to filter out large particles. So now that we managed to fit the cover using a rubber band, we will now be proceeding to add a few cotton balls. You can use a cotton layer, but I just decided to go with cotton balls since my mouth was just the, the mouth of the bottle, so it was a small gap. And I just added a few more cotton buds just to make, I mean sorry, cotton balls just to make sure that it's enough. And then I just proceed, apologies for using we, I just proceed to add the sand. As you can see, there's already some sand to be demonstrated over there on the cut piece of the bottle, but it's the same as the sand that I'm already pouring into the bottle. Once that is done, I'm going to be adding a few gravel pieces, quite large ones actually, mainly because my dirty water sample, which I'll be showing you in a bit, actually has a few of these large particles that need to be filtered out. So once the gravel is added, you'll see a little view of the final filter. Get to that. Just making sure that there's no gap, of course there's a gap, but there's no uneven gap there. So once that's done, once the filter is prepared, as you can see, I just fit it onto the onto the cut piece of the bottle. So now that we prepared our filter, here's a little look at our dirty water. It's quite dirty, yeah. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna be adding a powder, aluminum sulfate. And what this is gonna be doing is it's gonna be causing the dirty particles, the small chemical particles, the ions inside the dirty water to react with the aluminum sulfate to form fog. And this fog is gonna be a much larger particle compared to the small iron particles that are difficult to be filtered out. And this fog can be removed a lot easier during the filtration process, so that the final water product is cleaner water. So I'm gonna be demonstrating that in a bit. Just gonna be using the spoon. Just 1 tablespoon is enough, not too much. I mean, you can go for more, it doesn't really matter. And then I'm just gonna stir it with the water, the dirty water. After this, I'm just gonna leave it for around roughly 10 to 20 minutes just for it to settle down, for the reaction to take place, and for the particles to go to the surface due to sedimentation. Right, so now that we've left it for around roughly 10 to 15 minutes, let's take a look at how different the, the nature of the liquid is. Uh, Before, as we could see, it was a lot more liquid-ish, less volatile, but let's take a look at it now. It's more viscous now. As you can see, it's a lot more viscous, much more dense per se. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, we are going to be adding the dirty water into our homemade filter, and let's see the results. As you can see, the dirty water is really viscous. It's taking a lot of time to go through. It didn't take a lot of time to go through the gravel because most of it is a lot smaller. But as you can see, it's taking a lot of time before it's actually be able to go through the sand. So I added a bit more dirty water just to increase the pressure. And I even shake the bottle a little bit because it was taking a while, just to make sure it goes through the gaps. And if you look closely right at the bottle, the mouth of the bottle, you can see that it's already filling up in a way. You can see that it starts to get yellow. And I'll be explaining why it is yellow, why it's not exactly white in a bit. But let's just observe how the whole tissue, as you can see right now, is actually turning yellow. That is the tissue actually being filled up with the water, and now it's just started soaking. Well, now that we've managed to let it drip for a while, we can clearly see that it's still not clean entirely. It's yellow. But let's take a look at just how different it is from what it was at first. As you can see, it's clear. Even though it's yellow, it's really clear. And if you compare it with the original dirty water, which was really viscous, it's a lot less viscous. It's a lot clearer, mainly because the large particles and the medium-sized particles have already been filtered out. So now that we finished the whole thing out, you might be wondering, but at the start of the presentation, you mentioned that we can get clean water that can be used for household applications. But the water that I obtained was yellow, right? So now you might be wondering, how can you use this water for any household applications? Well, there's a few reasons as to why the water that I obtained was yellow. First of all, I could not find sand that was fine enough to be used alongside the gravel and the other sand particles that I used in my apparatus. Furthermore, the cotton I used was not that much. I used around 3 to 4 cotton balls, which I'm pretty sure if I use around 10 to 12, I can obtain white, clearer water. But as we all know, the purpose of this experiment is to show how filtration works. exactly to obtain 100% pure water, because let's be real, even if you obtain 100% water, 100% clear looking water, how can you be sure that any chemical impurities have been removed? Because this is just physical filtration. The actual filtration process that produces water that we drink today involves a lot of chemical procedures. So now that we've finished our little experiment, let's talk about more improvements that we can bring to the apparatus to make it actually applicable. I've mentioned a few just a while ago, but I think it's not worthy that we go over them as well. So first and foremost, one of the most important things to do for this setup is to find finer sand. This is because as we can see in the experiment, we used sand that wasn't exactly very fine. We used sand that was more towards gravel. So we need to use sand that is really fine. Even clay would work, but clay in somewhere between clay and sand. So let's just say fine sand, so that the smaller particles that are causing this yellow pigment will also be filtered out. Furthermore, to the filter, we can add charcoal, because charcoal absorbs a lot of chemicals and a lot of these wastes, a lot of the dirty impurities in water. However, due to the SOPs, I was unable to go to a store that whereby I could get charcoal in the form that can be used as a filter, as in our filter. Therefore, another thing that we can use to improve is to use charcoal. Furthermore, instead of the tissue paper that I used, we can further go for something that has smaller pores in it, such as a coffee filter paper, which would allow us to have more filter power, so that more of the impurities are being trapped in the filter paper as well. And last but not least, instead of using cotton balls, you can use cotton layers. What this does is it ensures that there are no gaps in the mouth of the bottle, because when I used cotton balls, I found out that there were a few gaps from which a lot of unfiltered water can pass through, which also can be a reason as to why the yellow pigment was there. So instead of that, we can use cotton layers to ensure that it's more even and that all the water is, all the chemicals and the impurities are filtered out properly. And that will be it from me for my experiment. I hope that this was insightful in a way. I hope that it acknowledged all the objectives of the experiment, and I wish you all a very good night, and thank you.